we're back with the next chapter of Expect the Unexpected by our two Vulpix and maybe Corona Packs. I don't know when they become the co-author or co-writer, but I know Heidi is their character, but I don't know when exactly they start taking helping out more with this. But it seems they did help a little bit. They do help in the review section. But yeah, anyway, if you liked, we are on chapter 43. In the last chapter, Heidi was basically telling off the toys. It was a very short chapter. This one looks like it's a little longer. And then there's like a very short, sweet moment with Heidi and Mangle, kind of, because Mangle understands the originals, and that's why she's sympathetic to them, and she's not being cruel. She's probably the favorite toy. She's probably Heidi's favorites. She'll say she doesn't have a favorite, but Mangle is definitely her favorite. Anyway, if you would like to follow along with chapter 43, the link will be in the description below as always. Now let's get started. Chapter 43, Ambulance. The truce between the groups remained tense. It felt like anything could break it, so it wasn't surprising that exactly that happened a week or so after the last fight. Ruby walked in on a massive argument as her shift began. She gave an irritated sigh as she rubbed her temples and proceeded to break it up with the air horn again. Everyone glared at her for that, like usual. "Would you stay out of it?" Toby snorted at her, twitching all over. He was so mad. He glanced at her, relieved to see the stubborn night guard for once. She was relentless in breaking these fights up, at least. "You idiot!" Ruby hissed back. "You've been screaming so loudly that you've terrified Mangled under the table." The other bouts followed her finger and immediately felt guilty. She was cowering under the table still. Heidi rolled over to coax her out while Toby still fumed. Where did the night guard get off on pretending to care about one of them? It was infuriating. Ruby passed him on her way to help Heidi and muttered under her breath, "Some friends." That was the last straw for him. "Shut up!" Toby snapped, whipping around to hit her with the back of his arm. Ruby was too focused on Mangle and Heidi to notice, and so she didn't dodge in time. She took the full brunt of an animatronic blow for the first time, and as the back of his hand connected with her arm, a crack echoed around the room. Ruby flew into the opposite wall with a cry, as everyone looked up in shock. There was a beat of silence before Foxy launched himself at Toby with a snarl. "You're dead, rabbit!" Toby's eyes widened to the size of saucers as he realized he actually hit the night guard right before an angry fox who was much bigger and much faster plowed into him with a screech. He yelped and tried to duck, but Foxy grabbed him and knocked them both over a table and to the floor. Toy Bunny had never actively feared for his life before, the closest being when he and the others thought they were going to be scrapped and melted down for parts after the last place, his home, closed its doors. He'd always thought that it was funny when a night guard freaked out after they saw him. It was hilarious how a human reacted to knowing Toy Bunny and the others were coming to kill them. Basically, he didn't even really understand terror himself until he saw Foxy snap his razor-sharp teeth inches from his face. He was close enough to see Foxy's endoskeleton teeth. Toby was frozen for a moment as the situation caught up to him before he frankly started kicking and clawing in attempts to get Foxy off, shouting and screaming all the while. Foxy's was all growls and snarl as he pinned the rabbit down, going for his throat. Bonnie was staring at the scene, frozen in shock, while Freddy and Chica rushed over to Ruby. Goldie was also frozen midair. Ruby never got hit. At least, never that badly. Ruby was curled around her arm, breathing heavily. She gritted her teeth to stop a scream as she moved her arm accidentally. "Yeah, that's broken. Definitely broken," she muttered to herself. He glanced between the fight and Ruby as she backed up as quickly as she could, which really wasn't very quickly at all. She was too close. She yelped as Toby kicked Fox's arm, making a swing of his hook come a little too close to her leg. Thankfully, Mangle had scrambled out from under the table as soon as the fight started, and she and Toy Chica pulled Edie back far enough. "Toby!" Toy Chica shouted in worry. No way was he going to survive this. Never mind win it if someone didn't make them stop. However, no one except maybe the night guard was going to get through the fox's bloodlust, and Ruby didn't seem able or willing to do anything, curled around her arm in pain, as Freddy and Chica tried to check on her while keeping a wary eye on the brawl. He looked between the violent fight and Ruby again as she tried to decide what to do. Ruby was hurt, and Foxy looked like he was seriously going to kill Toy Bonnie. Yelling for everyone to stop wasn't going to help. Toy Freddy were already trying that. She had an idea. It was going to make a lot of people mad at her, but it would diffuse the situation safely until Ruby could get checked out and before Toby got his throat ripped out. And frankly, she'd rather everyone be furious at her later than Toby dying. That was an exaggeration. Foxy growled like a real animal and was actually trying to get his teeth around Toby's neck. He'd already torn through the wiring on Toby's arm and chest, and an ear was sparking as it flopped around uselessly. Ruby actually growled at Chica as she tried to look at her arm, eyes dazedly following the fight. Foxy didn't look like he was slowing down, and every snap he drew was closer to the frantic rabbit's throat than the previous one. Goldie was still frozen, even though she'd be the best for teleporting Foxy or Toby away. Freddy couldn't get her to focus, though. Suddenly, Toby cried out as he made a fatal mistake and misjudged his dodge. Foxy's jaws finally clamped around the blue rabbit's neck, where a lot of very important tubes and wires were located. He and his breath hitched, and she hurriedly threw a party hat at the fox with one hand while raising the other. "Hey, Foxy!" Foxy looked up to threaten her to stay out of it, losing his bite slightly. He flicked on her high-powered flashlight and pointed it straight at his eyes. She flickered it a few times for good measure. Time seemed to stand still for a second while Fox's eyes widened and his optical lens constricted in attempts to keep the light from overloading his systems to no avail. "Sorry," he said honestly, and winced as the pirate's joints locked up. He collapsed, and his processor was forced into a system reboot, the lights behind his eyes shutting off. Toy Bonnie immediately pushed him off and looked up, thankful, only to meet the eyes of very disappointed Edie. "You too," she said, and pointing the flashlight at him. Toby was interrupted before a single word came out and shut down next to Foxy. Ruby blinked in shock before she abruptly looked furious, and frightened Chica had to hold her back before she could hurt herself more by moving. "What did you do to Foxy?" she demanded angrily. Her arm shifted, though, as she hissed and curled around again, fierce eyes still on Edie. "He'll be okay," Edie said, expecting this. "He'll wake up in a few minutes." She immediately stowed away the flashlight into her bag and zipped it up so that the others didn't think she was threatening them. Ruby let out a pained growl, though. She clearly wasn't happy with Edie's solution. "Will you let me look at your arm?" Freddy asked crossly. Ruby shot him a look. "No," she grunted out. She was being petulant and immature, but that was to be expected considering she was still a teenager and probably going to shock from the pain. He got out her phone and looked at the two prone figures. "We should separate them before they wake up," she noted as she started dialing. She looked at Freddy. "How bad is it?" Freddy huffed since Ruby was being stubborn and still not letting him get a good look. The crack they heard earlier told them a lot, though. "It's definitely broken," he told her, as Ruby ground at Chica again for trying to look. "Okay, Ruby, I'm either calling the ambulance or I'm getting your parents' number unless you convince me otherwise," he said sternly. She wheeled over to the chair where Ruby had left her jacket and pulled out the night guard's cell phone, holding it up warningly. Ruby froze, and the glare she shot at Edie actually shocked her. The teenager's jaw tensed as the bots fell silent. They had a problem now. Ruby hadn't told the new arrivals that she was an orphan yet. The night guard's aversion to vehicles was also a problem. They glanced nervously between themselves while Ruby stayed silent. He looked at Ruby evenly, getting over her brief shock after a second. She gave her a pointed look as she opened the cell phone and went to Ruby's contacts. They watched Healy's slight confusion as she looked through the entire list, only to not find a mom or dad or any variation thereof or anywhere in there. She glanced up with a raised eyebrow but didn't mention it directly. Give me a number right now, or it's the ambulance. Ruby actually flinched at the word, causing her to shift her arm again and hiss in pain. Freddie looked at Heidi worriedly, wondering if they should say something. Ruby couldn't get to the hospital in her condition without an ambulance, but this wasn't going to be easy. Teddy, Mangle, and Toy Cheeker glanced between each other, but decided to concentrate on moving the unconscious Toby away from Foxy. Ambulance it is then, he said, holding up her own phone and closing Ruby's. For some reason, she felt like she shouldn't use Ruby's phone for that. Ruby flinched at the word again, and it was just weird. None of them had ever seen her flinch before. Bonnie crouched down next to her, ears back. It'll be okay, Ruby, he insisted, as her muscles tightened. Why couldn't he have just knocked me freaking unconscious? Ruby muttered. He paused, looking at their reactions. Ruby, I'll take it myself if that would be better, he offered hesitantly, and with a little more gentleness. There was actually a layer of sternness. She wasn't budging about getting Ruby some medical attention. Actually, that would probably be worse. Unless you got some decent sedatives, Ruby muttered sadly. Benadryl? He said half-jokingly. Her finger still hovered over the call button. Anything as long as it will knock me out immediately, Ruby answered dead seriously. The paramedics always knock me out right away now. Don't add that, he said apologetically, and pressed the button. Hello, she said into the phone. I need an ambulance sent to my location. A pause. Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria? Suddenly, he jerked away from her phone and stared at it, checking if she had called the right number. She sneered and answered the unheard question with a snap. No, I'm not calling about a dead body or a bad smell. My coworker has a broken arm and needs to be taken to the ER. She sighed and ran a hand down her face. Ruby couldn't seem to help it. She snickered while the originals winced. He was still talking to the operator on the other end of the phone. No, this isn't a prank call. I work here. Is my answer relevant to whether or not you send an ambulance? She paused and said to the group, They're coming. She blinked as the operator asked another question. I haven't had her near. No, she's conscious. Night guard. Yes, the night guard. I just said she was the night guard. I don't know, let me check. Petey said that last sentence with exasperated sarcasm. Hey, Ruby, are you stuffed in a suit? Because this intern seems to think you are. She spoke loudly so that the person on the phone who was annoying her could hear. Still alive and with a freaking broken arm, lady, Ruby yelled. There was a pause. Did you say Ruby? What's she gotten herself into this time? They asked in an exasperated tone. Petey frowned. Wait, you sounded like me just then. You know her? Every operator and paramedic knows her, the lady grumbled. Sounds like Cheryl, Ruby murmured. He immediately flinched at the name Cheryl and swallowed, but spoke to the operator anyway. Why am I not surprised? She deadpanned. Are you a Cheryl by any chance? Yeah, always me that gets her calls. I'll send Brad since he deals with her best, she sighed. I'll take your word for it, so long as you quit asking about Freddy's, he said, not unkindly this time. To Ruby, she added, She said she's sending Brad. Oh, I like Brad, she mumbled distractedly. All right, fine, Cheryl said at the same time. One more. Did you say Ruby was a night guard at Freddy's? Yes, he eventually answered. Why am I not surprised? She sighed. I think that's what I just said, Edie said with a small laugh. Please tell me you two aren't comparing notes, Ruby whined. Edie rolled her eyes. Out of the corner of her eye, she thought she saw Foxy twitch, and she frowned. Thanks for the amulet, Cheryl. I think I hear it, but I have to go now, she said a little hurriedly. Right, I didn't catch your name, the operator said. Edie, she answered, eyeing the box on the floor. Ruby moaned as she heard the ambulance and a flash of something appeared in her eyes. Panic? Edie noticed but didn't say anything as she said goodbye to Cheryl and hung up. She wheeled up and handed Ruby her phone and put her own away. Sorry for being a boring, responsible adult here, Ruby. Can I have the keys? Have the key to let them in, please? Ruby grumbled something incomprehensible while Freddie handed them to her. He thanked him and went to let the paramedics in. Mangle following after, making sure Teddy and Toy Chica were able to take Toby to the other room by themselves. The lead paramedic, Brad, hesitated at the door upon seeing Mangle standing behind a young woman in a wheelchair, but only for a second before rushing in, his partner following closely as he eyed the robot. When he led them to the main room, they blinked at the mess and zeroed in on Ruby next to Freddie and Chica. Goldie had disappeared for the moment. Come on, Ruby, Brad sighed. Again? She flashed a pained smile at him. The partner was eyeing the prone Foxy in the middle of the room suspiciously, then looked at Freddie and Chica, who had backed up a little to let Brad check Ruby without them looming over him. Get the gurney, Greg, Brad told him. We're going to have to knock her out before we take her to the ambulance. You guy? Ruby squinted at Greg. Greg frowned but nodded. They weren't supposed to use those drugs unless it was an actual emergency. A teenager with a broken arm didn't usually count. As he left, he gave a wide berth around Foxy and walked a little faster when Mango flashed him a smile. Yeah, you scared off the last one, Brad said matter-of-factly. Good to know. Oh, I'm not the only one that thinks she has that effect on some people, he smirked. She looked at the bots. None of them had said anything since the paramedics came in. Oh, that makes free, Ruby smirked, but it was strange. Chica giggled a little at that, but quieted almost immediately. There was another giggle, a little louder. Brad whipped his head around just in time to see Freddie and Toy Chica duck behind their door again. You work in the strangest places, he sighed. Just knock me out before I panic. She groaned. You'll be okay, Vanya assured again. Around time, Greg appeared with a gurney and a needle syringe with the sedative. He handed the syringe to Brad wordlessly. Ruby eyed the needle with distaste, but she preferred it over the ambulance. He made a face at the needle and watched as the paramedic injected the sedative and, with his partner's help, lifted Ruby onto the gurney as carefully as they could. Ruby was out like a light. This, Greg, is Ruby protocol, Brad said. You only try and get her in the ambulance awake if you want to lose a few limbs. Greg gulped and nodded. How long is she going to be? Probably overnight at least, Brad told her. It's a strong sedative. Dang it, Edie muttered, knowing that it meant she had to deal with everything on her own unless the bots suddenly all decided to be cooperative. As if she could do it, but it wasn't going to be easy. The paramedics took her away while the bots watched anxiously. They waited until the sirens had faded to move. Teddy, the mechanic said finally, I have a job for you. I need you to watch Toby. When he wakes up, you make sure he stays there until I can have a talk with him. The originals watched her worriedly while Bonnie checked on Foxy. Toy Freddy looked on for a second before nodding mutely and leaving. Toy Chica looked conflicted for a second before she decided to follow, casting a nervous glance at the originals. Megal debated on whether she should follow too, until she realized that would mean leaving Edie alone with the original. Where'd you learn that? Freddie snapped, referring to the flashlight trick. Edie didn't answer immediately. She wheeled around until she could see Foxy's face properly, his eyes specifically. He was still restarting, but the lights behind his eyes were starting to flicker on slightly. She sighed. This was not going to be a pleasant conversation. And that's the end of chapter 43. As promised, a little more longer than the last few chapters. I think it was definitely the last chapter. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like. Go leave a review. There is a link in the description. You can click on it and go leave a review. You don't need an account. It just means the author can't respond. So go. We're done here. And be sure to subscribe. Upload videos every Friday and Saturday. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with another chapter of A New Discovery. Anyway,